I just noticed a terrible thing. On this particular MaxPax account, and I believe this is his main account, he plays with the Kate Lockwell portrait. Oh no. Oh no! Probably the worst Wings of Liberty campaign character. When you can run Donnie Vermillion, then why would you run... Anyway, spawning right here in the top left, his opponent playing in red. We're looking inside of the main base of Reynor. Apparently MaxPax is part of Team Kate. Apparently he doesn't enjoy the beautiful truth that Donnie Vermillion spreads on the television. It's going to be a gateway expand here. This particular best of 5 was recently played during Wardy TV's championship, so a $7,500 tournament. We've already seen both of these players play in this event before during the group stages, and this particular match was played during the playoffs, so later on into the event. Reynor has been spending a lot of time over in Korea. As a matter of fact, I think this actually is played from Korea, so... I guess that's what it is. Yeah, this is probably MaxPax's main account, but this is his North American account. So usually when you have Korea going up against Europe, it's to basically equalize the ping to make it, like, bad for both players, I suppose. Not favorable for one too badly. I think this is probably MaxPax's North American account. That's where he plays with Kate Lockwell. And I think this is probably Reynor's then as well, but he was just playing with the good old Kaczynski portrait, aka the default, the standard. That's gonna be it. Now, it does mean that certain strategies are slightly more difficult to pull off. Effectively, everything you do, if you're playing, for example, from Korea, or if you're playing from Europe on the NA server, everything you do is going to be delayed by about, like, 0.2 seconds or so. It's not that big of a deal for most things, but you can imagine, right? If you're trying to, like, get the perfect positioning on the Psystorm and the perfect timing of everything, you kind of get used to it after a game or two, but it can certainly make the game a little bit more difficult. Fun fact, by the way, I think the completion rate for pro gamers of the StarCraft 2 campaign is maybe 50% at, like, the absolute high end. The majority of the pro gamers, as we have a Stargate opener here from MaxPax, never touched the campaign. They don't care. Some of them have played the campaign on, like, casual difficulty, which I find very interesting. So obviously you can look up player profiles in-game. But to be considered one of the very best players on the entire planet and then playing the game at the slowest possible speed with, like, the absolute least amount of trouble you could ever have on the easiest difficulty, it's just curious to me. Maybe they can't do it. Maybe the brutal is too hard. I think you can play casual at, like, the absolute fastest game speed, which basically means that, like, the attack waves have, like, 3 units in them from the enemies at most. And then your units have, like, twice the amount of health and they deal, like, twice as much damage. That's, I think, what the casual game mode entails. It is just that. It's extremely casual. Either way, First Adept right now gets in. The dancing will indeed begin between the troops. For now, a Spore Crawler gets morphed in. He's going to cancel it just to save the drone. Oracle coming up. Against somebody like MaxPax, you cannot make a mistake in the early game. Obviously, that's easier said than done. But MaxPax is extremely good at straight up StarCraft 2. Reynor can sometimes be a little bit messy with his execution. Sometimes he can miss a little bit of that consistency. I do think, though, that, yeah, in my mind, these two are evenly matched. It really can be either way. Like, I can see this going, like, 3-0 for Reynor. I can also see this going 3-0 for MaxPax somehow. Momentum is a very real thing. But when MaxPax is feeling good, and when he's got the patch figured out nicely, which at this point I think he does, he sometimes gets into those moments where he looks nigh unbeatable. We've obviously seen Reynor go up against some of the very best Protoss players on the planet. I did cast a series recently of him, for example, playing against Classic, for example, playing against Zaun. Now, I think the style that Classic went for, a very, well, classical approach, aka the type of approach that MaxPax usually does as well. I do believe that that is something that Reynor can struggle against a little bit more. Are we gonna go Blink? Blink would be the norm. So Oracle into Blink? No, it's not. MaxPax goes Charge first. Okay. Charge together with the +1 ground attack. Roach Warren on the back of this for the Zerg, together with a lair. Very normal timing for the lair. Very standard timing as well for the Roach Warren. A quick +1 melee, all things considered. How many gateways are we going to commit to, Max? So charge, of course, is always scary. We're going to go charge into Archons, probably. Could also go into Storm if he wants to. But you can definitely commit to, like, effectively an all-in as the Protoss with this type of build. Nice catch right here by Reynor. The sight radius of the Adept when the shade is active is very small. So you can't actually see that much. So Reynor purposely hit all of those links. Moved in as soon as the shade wore off. So there was no more way for MaxPax to cancel. Nice catch there for Reynor. He's going to keep those oracles right now at home. Because as soon as the links are freely out on the map, yeah, you can't really commit very well anymore. Hydra then on the back of this. Reynor actually not skipping out on the Roach Warren, of course. But he did not plant down a Baneling Nest or anything along those lines. And considering he's going for the +1 melee, we'll probably just sort of treat this Roach Warren as a just-in-case Roach Warren, where he's not likely to actually go into a lot of roaches here. Well, against an Archon Zealot push, it might just be what he needs. MaxPax is moving out already. Charge is going to be done. +1 ground attacks for Protoss. It does make the Zealots 2-shot Zerglings rather than 3-shot. So it's a big improvement. We do have, okay, the good old follow-up here. We do indeed see the research inside of the Templar Archives. Archons are being juggled already, but there's the big warp in. He cancels the warp in. That's a misplay, actually. I don't know if MaxPax could have really finished it, but I think he should have. A lot of Zerglings were going to pay the price. Either way, he canceled it for just a moment, but we are going to commit to the aggression regardless. No roaches in the mix. No banelings in the mix either. Looks like we will be going into a 4th Nexus, though, momentarily, since there's already a probe getting into position. Okay, this is the time, apparently, that Reynor decides to commit, but he needs to be careful. Bunch of Hydras are coming out. These Archons are having a grand old time. 11, 20. Ooh, so much damage. I think it's about 20 kills on the one of them. I saw 11 on the first one, but it probably has more like 20 by now as well. Okay. There's the 4th. Extra gateways coming up, but Reynor has already gone into a hive, and he's now already added on a lurker den as well. 4th hatchery is up. For proper lurker transitions, you do need 7, maybe 8 gases or so in total. So it's important to get that 4th base up and running ASAP. Reynor indeed takes the gas. Good defense there by the Italian Zerg. We have had Overseers looking around for a little bit already. The contamination there slowing down the Psystorm research, but as long as Psystorm is done eventually, it doesn't really matter. And you know what? We've got a whole lot of High Templar already casually levitating to the rest of that Protoss ball. Okay. Second Evo Chamber on idle. I'm guessing we're going to go into the ranged upgrade for the lurkers here immediately. Not yet. He's actually prioritizing Adrenal Glands. Huh. Usually we see Seismic Spines as the main goal. Or as the main goal here in the earlier stages of the game for Zerg. Although he's already at Hive Tech. We are effectively skipping the mid game now. Fleet Beacon indeed gets planted out as well. So MaxPax will be going into just a straight Skytoss. Like a Skytoss type of death bowl, I suppose. Although he's going to test the waters. He has a lot of ground units available. May as well. It's not a second Stargate, so maybe it's actually just for the Mothership. Seismic Spines coming up, though, for Reynor. That is the ranged upgrade for the lurkers. Looks like the Zealots have decided to unload over there in the back of the Zerg player's natural. The Zealot group over here going after the 5th hatchery of the Zerg player, and I don't think that this one is going to stay alive. Yeah, minerals will be returned, but a lot of time lost. So now it's 4 base versus 4 base. Stargate number 2 and 3 coming up here for Max. What about these lurkers? The lurkers are putting in a lot of damage. Okay, getting a Revelation down onto them is not a bad idea. Neither is that Storm, though. Those Storms are dealing so much damage over time these days. Lasting so much longer. Tempest number 1 coming up. MaxPax is progressing. Reynor is still maxed, though. Dancing back and forth. Okay. Massive Ling run by. So keep in mind, these Zerglings do have Adrenal Glands now. And Adrenal Glands makes Zealots a lot more killable. Not so much High Templar, though. Good thing to back off against that Storm. MaxPax still kind of wandering around this map like he owns the place. I love the confidence. Just needs to be careful. He's not going to get surrounded and will not be able to find his way back home. Because I think he may be getting cut off here. Zerg units indeed burrow right next to this again. Zealot run by heading on over towards that 5th hatchery yet again. Recall on these units is smart because it felt to me as well like you were indeed getting cornered. And since Tempests are coming up now, it makes a lot of sense to just sort of relax. 5th hatchery gets denied yet again. And as all of this is going on, right, even though MaxPax isn't really dealing damage with the attacks like he would have liked to, it's still 4 base versus 4 base. And when you're on an even amount of economy as a Protoss, going up against the Zerg, I think you can be pretty happy. Ultimately, this Protoss army is going to be extremely dangerous, whereas Reynor really needs to get a new base going ASAP. Now, Winter Madness does not have very easy expansion patterns, right? It's just not a straightforward way for Zerg to get another base. He doesn't have an alternative choice. Other than this one, there's nothing else. Spire going up in the main base. Probably get some Corruptors going if he notices that indeed it is a big transition towards Skytoss. Likewise, though, for MaxPax, getting a 5th up is hard. This one is not going to happen. We're going to have to see a cancel on that. No cancel, so that's 400 minerals down the drain. What about the secondary fight over here? Both players trying to do a run-by to each other. Who wins this particular engagement? Well, without detection, I think it's going to be hard for Protoss. Fight over here at the front, also not looking too spicy. A lot of Storms do go down, though, but while the Zerglings disappear, the High Templar also were forced to turn into Archons. So no more Storms available in this bowl. Still some Templar, though, out on the map. Mama ship now coming up. +1 air weapons, researching. Nidus Worm in the back of the Protoss main base. Not too shabby. And since MaxPax is maxed, he's a MaxPax. Difficult for him to actually warp in units to try and deal with this. Yep, and that means that the Lurkers are going to pop out. So one of the downsides of being maxed, you can't actually move in with more troops there. Archon in the front does indeed get sniped. Loads of Lurkers still available over here too. Queens have come across as well, which I kind of love. Backup Nidus Worm here to serve as a way to get out and to maybe retreat if Protoss indeed commits a lot of units here in the main. And this is looking like a bit of a disaster right now for MaxPax, who's once more trying to get the 5th base up and going. It's not going to happen. A cancel this time around. Lurkers now knocking in the natural expansion too. Super difficult spot to break out of. Reynor decides to not overextend. He kills the main Nexus. He'll probably be ready to go home with those Lurkers. Ooh, the main army actually of the Protoss is moving onto the creep. This seems dangerous here for MaxPax. He does have a lot of reinforcements. Hydra's dash, try to get out of the storm. Recall yet again. MaxPax is going to lose a bunch of troops, though, on his way out. At least Mama is out. But, yeah, as this is getting cleaned up, MaxPax lost an awful lot of supply. And, of course, he never got that 5th hatchery or that 5th Nexus properly going. Likewise, though, even though Reynor does have the base, as we see the Time Warp pop down, the Hydra's dash in. We see the base over here finish for Reynor, but he didn't really saturate it. Nidus Worm going up again. Obviously, the main base's mineral line is not going to continue mining here for Protoss. So I guess that's another way for Reynor here to ultimately get that eco advantage. We are headed, though, to a Protoss army that is going to be absolutely vicious. This is a unit composition here where MaxPax basically only has good units, whereas for Reynor, well, there's still a bunch of just like bulk in the army, right? There's just a bunch of stuff, some cannon fodder to enable, for example, the Lurkers to be useful. This is a much more, yeah, this is a much more conventional army here for mid-game Zerg. Not really a proper late-game army just yet. And MaxPax is doubling down in that regard. Rebuilding the Templar Archives right now, going into the +2. +2 air weapons is really good. Reynor decides to burrow yet again, though, in this intersection. And this is such a difficult spot for the Protoss player to break. Lurkers are everywhere, and while the Tempest can slowly chip away at them, it just takes a long time. Corruptors are going to swoop in, it seems. Time Warp does get planted down. Recalls towards the Mothership right now, so we're going to bring more troops in. Oh, it's for the Storms. He recalled the High Templar in this direction to try and get those Corruptors to back off. Mama sacrificing herself for the greater good. 22 additional probes end up going down, though, and more Lings are reinforcing this. MaxPax is up with his back against the wall as the Zerg floods are just unstoppable. Third Nexus is going to fall as well. We do have to... Well, the next... the Stargate's still producing more and more units. And I like the army here that MaxPax still has. We've seen a lot of movement around the map from the Zerg. But he's only on 68 workers worth of economy here. It's not really that amazing of an army for Reynor. And these Zealot run-bys are going to hurt. These are properly upgraded Zealots. 16 drones fall. That's going to force this Zerg army to back off. Honestly insane here that MaxPax even manages to get this Zerg player to back off. Mothership starts up. Nexus rebuilt at the 3rd. Cybernetic score, number 2, coming up. 3 carriers as well, though, on the production tab. Okay. Gotta be careful here as Reynor that you don't let Protoss just macro his way back in this. Because the Zerg's economy is very questionable for the majority of all of this. Like, it's been okay. If we look at the income graph here, it's not terrible. But it's also not really anything to write home about, because, well, obviously this is just a Protoss army that will be far more cost-efficient. This little Zergling run-by is amazing, though. No cancel. That's the second time around that we see 400 minerals down the drain for MaxPax, and he can hardly afford that at this point in time. He also loses 14 probes. That is significant. Now we're getting to the spot, actually, where the 4th Nexus is going to start running low. These mineral fields still have, yeah, some are remaining. But MaxPax is not going to be in a spot where he can keep this going for a lot longer. He's going to need a 5th Nexus here before too long. Like, he needs a fresh mineral line. But I highly doubt it's going to be given to him. We do have a few Vipers, by the way, in the mix. Yep, Vipers with abduction. Free pickings there for the Zerg. Bunch of changelings move forward as well. One of them, for some reason, slips through the cracks. Bottom left base, taken for Reynor, who decided to, yeah, take it easy for a moment. Remax out yet again. Get a decent army going, but also have a slightly more late-game centric type of army, right? You don't have to go into, like, Ultras or Brute Lords or anything along those lines, although he's going to be thinking about it at the very least. But this is a more sustainable army than what we had previously. MaxPax never bothering now to rebuild that 3rd. He did rebuild the main base. Cybernetic score number 3 coming up as well for Protoss. Constant revelations, though, onto those Corruptors, making sure that he is not going to be surprised. This Protoss army is massive, by the way. Yeah, despite the fact that MaxPax has been losing practically every engagement, his army is outgrowing that of the Zerg. 160 army supply of Skytoss is always lethal. Let's see. Can Zerg actually hold on? There's a bunch of Spore Crawlers in the mix, which is nice. A lot of Lurkers in the back as well, also really good. Zergling run by, at least set up to potentially go after some of the mineral lines, but no easy targets for them, so he's just backing off with them. Tempest here, using that long range of theirs. Revelation has been used by the Oracles to get the vision of those Lurkers underground. Not a lot of creep spread in this section of the map, so Reynor has already been pinned back to the actual hatch itself. Maybe transferring the drones towards the bottom left-hand corner may be the way to go. A couple of Lurkers are going to join the Zergling run-by squad as well. MaxPax a little concerned about all of his units getting abducted one at a time. He decides to move around the site here. I think he could have likely gone after the actual base itself. Reynor knows, though, that at this point, action is on Protoss. There's little reason for him to engage this Protoss player off creep. Just keep the pressure up. Try to, well, force them to fight where it is best for the Zerg. Still, though, MaxPax is getting some really good engagements here off across the board. If you look at, like, the resources lost, it's not really reflected that well. But there are certainly more losses on the side of the Zerg than there are on the side of the Protoss. And this army, it's scary. Static defense over at that 4th Nexus has been strong. Archon's in the choke point over here at the, well, where the old 3rd used to be. Trying to just get value wherever possible. MaxPax a little bit indecisive as to where he should be engaging. Ultralisk coming up. Ooh. If Ultralisk can actually kill all of the Templar on the ground and all of the Archons, then I think Corruptors themselves can probably force the win. Ultras, though, they always feel like a unit that you can throw the game with. I don't know. We've seen Reynor be extremely fond of the Ultra lately. But it's still scary to me to go Ultras in the late game against Skytoss. Technically, it's not bad. It's just that it can go horribly wrong. There are 4 Immortals in the mix, 8 Archons, 6 High Templar. I think the 6 Ultralisks are not going to be enough to actually destroy all of that. You kind of need to get the overwhelming numbers. At this point, MaxPax will see, okay, wait a second, my opponent is indeed going into Ultras here. If you could squeeze out another couple Immortals, that would be massive. Infestation Pit is researching the Neuroparasite. If you can fight in a location as well, where those Ultras cannot go in for a surround, that's another way of potentially getting the job done. +2 air weapons is going to finish. Extremely nice, especially for the carriers. Reynor is playing this so slow after being hyper-aggressive for a long while in this match. When does he decide to pull the trigger? That's the question. The Zergling run-bys are still going to town. Bottom left base, by the way, not addressed at all. Here we go. Reynor decides to attack move into everything. We do get some good fungal growths. It's hard to say what's going on the ground, but the Ultras are chomping through everything. But the Skytoss not just going to survive this. Only a handful of Corruptors remain, and indeed the Skytoss units are still up and flying. This is now suddenly flipped upside down. This is no longer an army that can be killed by the Zerg. Corruptors are coming, but 13 is not going to cut it, and Reynor doesn't have the resources to actually overwhelm this. We do see the Ultras and the Zerglings, though, going in for the counterattack. Base in the far bottom left has been spotted. MaxPax's reinforcements running on over in that direction. Don't do it, drones. You guys are not going to win against this force. Protoss units are going to be meeting together in the middle. In the meantime, the Ultras are trying their best to come up with a plan, but they don't really have a spot where they can fight. And just like that, it's MaxPax who grabs the supply advantage. Recall right now, back home. Where do we go? Oh, to the natural? Okay. I'm surprised with how slow MaxPax is playing this, but I'm even more surprised with how slow Reynor decided to approach the late game here. MaxPax doesn't know about the hatch in the far top right. He's gonna see it right here, though. Drones are moving around. This is now pretty much the only mining that Reynor has. How many Corruptors are there? I think MaxPax decided to back off because he was afraid of like a, I don't know, like a 40 Corruptor reinforcement type of situation. We see that all the time in the late game in this matchup. But Reynor never really has had a big economy in this game, so he never really mined the resources to be able to instantly remax with Mass Corruptor. That's why MaxPax is being a little hesitant. He's looking around right now. He knows that there isn't much mining here for the Zerg. Gotta test the water, see if maybe he can get some work done. The Zergling run by yet again towards the 3rd, though. And this Nexus is just, yeah, an absolute bane for Max. He's just not been able to get it up and running after losing it the first time around. Those pesky Zerglings denying it over and over and over again. But really, the only mining that Reynor currently has is right here. He is flat broke. Nice abduction. But there's 12 Corruptors against 6 Carriers, 6 Archons, and 4 Tempests. Mothership itself puts in a ton of work as well. Good storms here onto the Zerglings and the Ultras. The Time Warp is really nice too. We see the Corruptors moving in though, and we do have the Parasitic Bombs being utilized. But despite the fact that MaxPax seemed to be on the brink of tapping out, he lost his main base. It's Max who obtains the victory. Okay, and just like that, we find ourselves on the map Tourmaline. MaxPax probably very happy about how that game wrapped up. He probably thought he was down and out, pretty much guaranteed. But that's why you don't leave games too early. Sometimes you might just be able to get a victory even when you fall super far behind. But it is rare though, to lose your main base, to be forced to rebuild your cybernetics core a third time around, to be stuck on a very small economy but a nice, significant army. It's rare to then still come back. Zerg obviously always kind of struggles making that late game army. There's not really one go-to agreed upon unit composition for Zerg in the late game. All of them seem to have pretty obvious weaknesses and, well, Reynor paid the price. He's got to be upset about that now. Like, that is... Yes, it's a loss, but it's also a loss that kind of got ripped out of your hands, right? Like, that really was Reynor's game to lose, and... Or Reynor's game to win, rather. It was certainly not supposed to be a loss right there for the Zerg. I think he's going to be a bit tilted from that. Well, let's see if it is going to carry into the next game right here. For the time being, very normal builds, although Reynor did go after getting his natural expansion blocked for the forward third. The forward third is always a little bit suspicious. I think if you're MaxPax here, you immediately assume some sort of Queen March that could be heading towards your natural, because the distance is really not that far. If you get a Queen going here, you can put a Creep Tumor right pretty much in like the middle of the map. At least that's what it feels like. And suddenly the Zerg is going to come knocking at your front door. This is something, though, that MaxPax has played against many, many times. Yep. Stargate is going to be the name of the game yet again. No surprise there. Instant inject, actually, on this Queen. So not going for the straight Creep Tumor. Double inject in both of the bases. Okay. Now, the Adept will likely commit to a fight over at the third. Or I guess I'm going to call this the third, even though it's technically the first expansion that he took. But this forward expansion here is very exposed. Obviously, yes, the rush distance from the Zerg side of the map to the Protoss is short, but it's likewise also going to be much easier for MaxPax to send troops in. Usually we see Zerg players expanding away from where Protoss was. Okay, nice bit of aggression. Gets 3 kills in total so far on those Adepts. Saves the both of them. Okay. Oracle is going to be spawning here in just a moment. Twilight Council on the back it is already. So a Twilight Council here before the third Nexus. I wonder what MaxPax's plan is. Are we just going to still take a third? Okay. He could certainly commit to like hyper aggression. Oracle used here for base defense for now. Adepts will go into the main. Okay. 3 drones is good. 4 drones is amazing. 5 drones is epic. 6 is... Oh, 7? I ran out of I ran out of words. 8? Oh. I didn't have enough adjectives for that one. Now we go straight glaives. Yeah, I can't blame Max for that. The third Nexus here was at a pretty normal timing. It's a quick Twilight Council. The first few units here of MaxPax have done a good bunch of damage. The Oracle is flying around. It hasn't really achieved too much, but at the very least it's forced out a bunch of Spore Crawlers, and it still is forcing out a Spore Crawler. Zerg player also decided to make a lot of Queens to try and counter this. All of it is to say that any sort of aggression right now with Glaive to Depths is going to hit hard. And obviously the positioning here of the third base of the Zerg, of that forward expansion, it really does help out a bunch as well. This bit of aggression over here, though, is nice for Reynor. Slowing down the advancement of the Protoss economy is always good. But how many Adepts do we have at the moment? How many gateways are we on? We're on 4. There we go. He starts warping them in right now. Yeah, the probe count is not insane here for Max. Reynor, though, mostly just holding down the drone button. He did go for the Roach Warren. That's nice. He is building up, well, a whole bunch of economy, but he's skipping out the lair to try and pull this sort of thing off. That means no Spire, no Roach Speed, no Hydras, nothing like that. What we do get is a whole lot of Adepts moving in. Roaches immediately fire up. Blink also gets research, though, here from Max. He doesn't really want to risk it. I think he's mostly just doing this to scare the Zerg. Doesn't really feel like a real commitment into Glaive to Depths. But he knows that he's done a lot of damage to the Zerg's economy, so you may as well try to keep them onto unit production and not onto actual drones. If you look at the worker count now, despite the fact that Reynor has been about as greedy as he could possibly ever be, MaxPax does have the third base pretty much fully saturated. Stalker follow-up is going to be quite scary. +1 ground attacks coming up as well for Protoss. We go for another Oracle. Fair enough. He didn't actually lose the first. But it's been so busy just cleaning up Zerglings that I guess it hasn't done much. What about this, though? Okay, this could hurt. This could hurt really badly for Reynor. Trading out the units is actually nice. You don't really want to keep Adepts around in the late game. The longer the game goes on, usually the worse it is for Adepts. So you may as well try to get whatever value you can get. Well, we have a push here from the Zerg on the other side. The Blink Stalkers are already done. I mean, the Blink is still researching, but the Stalkers themselves, the numbers are good. I think as soon as Blink finishes, Dark Templar on the back of this as well. I think as soon as Blink finishes, MaxPax is going to feel pretty good. That being said, though, the Cybercore is going to fall. We have a new Cybercore already building in the natural expansion, because in order to build Stalkers, you do obviously need to actually have a Cybercore. Okay. Not enough Stalkers here to one-shot the Ravagers. Queens will not have infinite amounts of transfusion energy, and Reynor decides to strike back. Reynor, though, is all in with this push. He needs to finish the Protoss player off with this, because if he doesn't, the eco here of MaxPax is just gonna be so freaking good. And honestly, considering the Stalkers don't really seem to be dying anywhere, and the Micro is looking really quite good here on the side of MaxPax, I am not too keen on how this is going for Reynor. Still, it's scary, though. Ravagers hit very hard. Corrosive Balls can always change the tide of battle. But in theory, Blink is going to be powerful. There is a Dark Templar, by the way, helping out as well. I really like that he only made one, sort of just to put in some supplemental damage, get a bunch of those Ravagers killed. The Ravagers are really expensive. GG, well played, gets cold. MaxPax manages to get a second point on the board. Next up, 10,000 feet. It was those Adepts. Those Adepts getting 9 worker kills in total was too much. I think that aggression there from Reynor would have looked very different if it wasn't for those Adepts putting in so much work. The problem is if you lose like what was effectively like a fourth or so of his total economy at the time to 2 units that were sort of meant to be... Yeah, we're just gonna say it. Don't let the Adepts hear this, but units that were meant to die anyway. Maximum value squeezed for MaxPax. Maximum Paximum. It's his Roman name. Maximus Paximus. Getting good value out of the units that he built. We're going to go into an Oracle here. Cheeky little snipe on the drone. Was Denmark ever part of the Roman Empire? I guess it wasn't, right? No, I don't think it reached... Barely not. More drones are dying again. 3 drones is good. 4 drones is great. 5 drones is amazing. Third hatchery coming up here for Reynor, who I'm a little bit worried for right now, because these are relatively basic attacks. You gotta be crisp with your defense. I mentioned it in the first game, and Reynor did a great job in the first game. But maybe it's because of that first game that he's feeling a little bit out of it right now. Sometimes you play a match where you feel like you do everything right and you still lose. And I wonder if maybe that's what that first game of this particular series felt like to Reynor. But now the defense is not looking as smooth here in the second and the third. Spore crawlers are being morphed in. Getting those going to try and counter the oracles. Twilight Council yet again. He's thinking about building a forge. This is going to be Blink. Blink, charge. Okay. So game 1, he went for charge first. Game 2, he went for Glaive the Depth first. Game 3, we go into Blink first. And that means in game 4, we go into Dark Templar first, right? All flavors of Twilight. None of that like Team Edward, Team Jacob stuff. I am Team Twilight Council. That's what I am. Team Dark Templar, actually. You know what? If you make me choose, I think I'm Team Dark Templar. 100%. There's something about them. Evo Chamber coming up here for Reynor. Lair much quicker this time around. I wonder if he wants to go in some sort of like Muta play, although it kind of looks like Hydras again. Doesn't really have a ton of gas. What are we building? Oh, there's going to be a Spire, isn't it? Yeah, it is going to be a Spire, considering he's adding on all the gases right now. But he doesn't have the gas at the moment to actually build the Spire. It's messy, right? Like he's... Okay, what? He went +1 missile. It looked to me like he wanted to go Spire. The signs were pointing to Spire, but then he goes Hydra then instead. Okay, maybe he wanted to go Hydras in the first place, too. Adept swoops in. All the gas is taken. MaxPax is going to see, of course, that all the gases are taken. But what about this little hit squad at the front? It's just a bunch of Blinky boys, and they managed to get the job done before Blink is finished. Are you a Blinky boy if you don't have Blink? Well, they got Blink eventually. And while Zerglings are technically a really good weapon against this sort of unit, the mobility is not too shabby, and with the pulsar beams getting activated and MaxPax with some really solid micro, he hasn't lost a single Stalker up to this point. Just micro better! Come on, man! I keep telling this to people that want to get better at StarCraft. Just micro really good. Just don't lose units. It's so obvious. I think he lost 1 Stalker. Yeah. 1 Stalker! 1 Stalker! That's crazy. Storm on the back of this. Fourth hatchery in the far top right, but Reynor is not really finding his groove here anymore. Problem is, he knows that this is going to be a lot of Protals, regardless of what this is going to be. Even if there is a 4th Nexus, there's going to be an insane amount of Protals. And there's this tucked away expansion. There's another tucked away base over here. 10,000 feet has those forward thirds, but then the backwards 4th, if that makes any sense. So if you take this as your 3rd base, it's technically a little bit riskier then. But if you go for like your 4th base, it's a bit easier to actually save it. So what is Reynor going to do? Well, he's on 3 base economy. He did build a 4th, but he's not adding on drones for it. He's basically just going for mass unit production now, and it's going to be Hydras with +1 and a bunch of Zerglings. There's no Baneling speed. There's no... there's not even a Baneling nest, so I don't really see how this army is going to be good. Storm, at the very least, is going to be delayed. Reynor is going to try and see if he can brute force his way up to this high ground with the Hydralisks. And you know what? The Hydra numbers are looking big. Maybe Reynor can actually capitalize on this situation, but Storm is now finished, even though the contamination there from... I think it must have been a contamination from the Overseer slowed it down some. The Protoss reinforcements are going to warp in literally the middle of the battle. Reynor decided to commit to one final hurrah there, but that was certainly not good enough for the Zerg to break the Protoss with. He decides to type about 17 Gs. I've noticed actually Reynor is fond of that. Whenever he loses a series, he doesn't just type 1 GG. That's for like a game number 1 type of thing. Maybe a game number 2 type of thing. But in the final game of the series, when he leaves, he seems to type a whole load of them. Brilliant series, though, across the board. The fact that MaxPax actually kept his head in the game in that first map, or on that first map, is kind of insane. It really felt to me like he was dead in the water, but he never gave up. And clearly, Reynor, well, I think at least mentally, he felt broken after that game. It's a 3-0 win. Not bad.